What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 6 of the Patel and Kumar Show. I am Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And I got my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. Mr. Kumar, welcome. The NBA is back and the round 2 of the playoffs is underway.
Namaste, Mr. Patel, and thank you very much for that introduction. As you rightly said, the round 2 has already begun, especially with the Eastern Conference, and pretty soon we'll have the round 2 for the Western Conference. And what an exciting show we have for you. We're going to recap whatever happened over the past week, especially with the boycott, and then coming back to the NBA. And we have the NBA segment where we will be discussing whether NBA is the most influential league and whether the players in the NBA are one of the most influential athletes. And of course, we have a very exciting Indian Tadka section where we have commentator, quizmaster, and sports promoter of the Pro Kabaddi League, Charu Sharma, with us. So hold on to your seats and, it can get more exciting than this, Mr. Patel.
Oh man, I'm excited to be here again talking with you, Mr. Kumar. Last time we talked when the boycott happened, but now the games are back. And to get started, we'd first like to start out by commemorating 4 gentlemen that passed away this week. And starting with Cliff Robinson, who played 18 years in the NBA and led the Blazers to the 1990 and 1992 NBA Finals. And he also had an All-Star appearance and a couple Defensive Player of the Year awards appearances. So rest in peace, Cliff Robinson. He was a great player to watch.
And of course, rest in peace, LUTE OLSON. He was the coach for 25 years at the University of Arizona men's basketball team. He also coached the USA team in the FIBA 1986 championships, which won the gold medal. And of course, we also have John Thompson, who was the coach at the Georgetown Hoyas. And of course, he coached Allen Iverson and Patrick Ewing and Alonzo Mourning. Rest in peace, John Thompson.
And lastly, Mr. Black Panther, Mr. Chadwick Boseman, Wakanda, who played the Black Panther most famously, who was the first African-American superhero to appear in a movie, and also played Jackie Robinson in the movie 42. And Chadwick Boseman was a huge NBA fan, having sitting courtside in multiple Lakers games, and he had a huge following among the NBA players. So rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. He was gone too soon from us.
Yeah, I would just like to remind everyone that, even Victor Oladipo a couple of years back during the slam dunk competition during the All-Star games, he wore that, Black Panther mask. And of course, Chadwick Boseman was also there. But yeah, I mean, it's too soon for him, and, respects to his family, and rest in peace, my friend.
Yes, rest in peace, Mr. Chadwick Boseman, and among the others. So now moving on, as many of you know, there was a boycott last week, but now we're going to quickly explain the process of how the NBA came back. So the NBA players did have a meeting on last Wednesday night, and it was pretty contentious because they weren't happy about the Bucks protesting and boycotting without letting the rest of the league know, because they wanted a unified approach. But then they decided to come together again Thursday morning and decided to play. And Jaylen Brown kind of started it by saying, we could use this platform, the NBA playoffs, to really share our message rather than being, at our own homes. The message may get a little bit diluted. And the owners and the players worked together, and they made a couple of agreements. The owners agreed that each of the NBA arenas are going to be polling centers. Like I said, the NBA players are going to continue to use their platform to spread social justice and equality. Also, the NBA Foundation, which is donating a lot of money to the economic improvement in the African-American community, and the TV networks are really encouraging people to go out and vote in this upcoming presidential election.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a precarious situation in the beginning with, LeBron James, especially the LA Lakers and LA Clippers walking out of that first meeting. And, at that point in time, it was considered like the teams are going to boycott and, there will be no basketball anymore. But I'm glad that better sense prevailed, and they got into a room, got talking, and finally we are underway with, of course, the last few games of, the round 1 of the playoffs, and of course, the round 2 as well. So yeah, I mean, and we're going to talk more about it, of course, in our NBA segment. Whether the NBA players and the NBA is how influential they are. So we'll have more of a debate with me and Mr. Patel in that segment. But let's get on with the recap, Mr. Patel.
All right, and quickly, we got a statement from a fan. Gayatri Joshi says the most awaited talk show. So appreciate the support to Gayatri Joshi and everybody else out there watching. We really appreciate all the support and love. So now moving on to the matchup slides for round one, starting with the East. So the East is pretty much all the series are over, and before we talk, the Magic and the Bucks still had to play their game 5, which not surprising, the Bucks ended up winning that game and closing out that series in 5 games. The Heat and the Pacers, which was a little bit of a surprise, even though the Pacers were without Sabonis, the Heat ended up sweeping that series. The Celtics and the Sixers, a heated rivalry, but it was pretty one-sided. The Celtics ended up sweeping the Sixers and sending Joel Embiid at home early. And then the Raptors, the defending champions, ended up taking care of business in the first round by sweeping the Brooklyn Nets, who, as many of you know, were without DeAndre Jordan, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and Spencer Dinwiddie. So the Raptors made light work of the Brooklyn Nets. What are your thoughts about the Eastern Conference first round, Mr. Kumar?
Well, a pretty easy series for the 3 teams, especially Heat, the Celtics, and the Raptors. Of course, the boycott happened, and especially at that particular game when the Bucks boycotted because, of course, of the incident that happened in their backyard. So we got underway with the last game, and they finished it off. There was no trouble there for the Bucks. So I think it's pretty much up to round 2 now, and those games are underway as well, which we'll be discussing soon.
And Mr. Kumar, you like this. Prashant Yamkar says, "Let's go Lakers."
Of course, I mean, let's go Lakers, and thanks Prashant Yamkar. They need all the support because they will be playing the Houston Rockets in round 2. Let's move on to the West recap. Of course, LA Lakers and Portland, which also was the game that was going to happen on the day they boycotted the games. They ended pretty much the same way they played the last 3 games, 131, 122 in that 5th game without Damian Lillard, who of course injured. But what a series it has been, especially with the Houston and OKC, which was wild, and so was the Denver and Utah, both going to 7 games. Houston winning that one, and Denver winning that one. And of course, the Clippers and Dallas was, pretty much no competition with Porzingis out of the series. So LA Lakers playing Houston and the Denver playing LA Clippers. So both series, I mean, my God, let me tell you, that whole week was amazing.
Oh, man, we were treated to some awesome games in the Western Conference. But Mr. Kumar, the Jazz and the Nuggets was must-watch TV. The battle between Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray. And they actually made history. Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray made history by both had 2 50-point games in this playoff series, which is the only other 2 players to have 2 50-point games were Allen Iverson and the great Michael Jordan. So their shot making was just unbelievable. They really fed off one another, and they were just playing at such a high level. And Nikola Jokic, though, in this Game 7 really came through. When Jamal Murray was struggling a little bit and he got a little banged up, by scoring 30 points and really carrying the load for the Nuggets in that 4th quarter and leading in a victory. But Mr. Kumar, I could see that. I want that series to go another 7 games because that series was just amazing to watch.
Yeah, I wish so too, but I would rather like to have the second round of the playoffs rather than 7 more games of Denver and Utah. Well, the Eastern Conference round 2 is already underway. We got 2 games in both the series, Milwaukee and Miami, and Boston and Toronto. And what a turnaround of events. I mean, Milwaukee and Toronto have been considered pretty much the favorites to come out in the East. And, both have lost 2 games and both are trailing 2-0. And, it's a pretty difficult situation for both these teams to come out and, win this series. I know Toronto probably did that last season in the finals with the Bucks, but these teams, Miami and Boston, both are like fighting teams, and it's going to be a difficult situation for both these teams.
It is, and right now I've been most impressed with the Heat. They played just really well. Yesterday, Mr. Kumar, they had 7 players have double-digit points. Like Goran Dragic led the way. Miami Heat, or excuse me, Milwaukee Bucks could not stop Bam Adebayo down in the paint. He was just getting whatever he wants. He was doing all the dirty work down low. And the Heat ended up making 17 three-pointers, getting 22 assists. I love the way that they're playing team basketball. And Giannis and Chris Middleton did have good games yesterday, but their offense was a little bit stagnant and very sloppy. The Bucks ended up having 14 turnovers, and right now the Bucks don't know their identity in offense on the offensive end on the floor. You know, Giannis I think is being a little too passive, trying to get his teammates involved a little bit too much when you as a superstar have to know that your team needs to win this game and you need to take over. And Karan is asking, do the two of you feel that the Bucks will bounce back? I think if a team that can come back from an 0-2 deficit can be the Milwaukee Bucks because they have Giannis Antetokounmpo, the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. And if he just elevates to that superstar level that you know he can play, I think that there's enough that he can overcome the Heat. And I don't think, Mr. Kumar, that the Heat can sustain their hot shooting ability for the rest of the series. So I don't know what your thoughts about that.
Well, until yesterday, I was picking the Bucks to probably win this series. I know it was just a loss in one game, but it's such a difficult hole that they're put in themselves. I just feel that Giannis, he's an incredible talent, but I don't think he has the capability to carry this team, in terms of difficult situations. And so I feel that it's a matchup of the coaches. It's like it's almost between Eric Spoelstra and Budenholzer, both who have been coaches of the year, in the past. So I just feel that the Milwaukee Bucks has a little bit of a one-dimensional game, especially with Giannis, and of course Chris Middleton came good, but it was Giannis who couldn't really dominate yesterday. So I think I'm picking the Miami in this series to win. So, of course, Soham Gupta is asking, does Pascal Siakam need to take the lead for the Raptors? I think as far as the Raptors are concerned, I think they have played a team game throughout the season. They have not been dependent upon one single player. So it's been the performances of Fred VanVleet. It's been the performance of Pascal Siakam. It's been the performance of Kyle Lowry and, of course, Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol. And of course, they've been supported by OG Anunoby and Powell, etc. So it's been a team performance for Toronto Raptors, and Boston have been able to match up to the Toronto Raptors in these past two games. And that's what I feel. So it's not about Pascal Siakam. It's the contribution is required from their starting five.
And I agree with you, Mr. Kumar, because you saw in Game 1 and Game 2, they were trying to isolate Pascal Siakam and give him post-up. But he was going against like 3 or 4 defenders, turning the ball over, taking bad shots. Pascal Siakam is not playing his game. He needs to know his spots and play his game if the Raptors want to be successful. So I definitely agree that the Raptors team need to have a team effort. Van Fleet needs to step up. Serge Ibaka needs to play better. Even Marc Gasol needs to raise his level a little bit. And Kyle Lowry needs to be more aggressive rather than just trying to get his teammates involved. So it definitely is going to be a team-oriented game for the Raptors. But I'm not even concerned about the Raptors on the offensive end because they'll get their shots and they'll make them. On the defensive end, Mr. Kumar, they have no answer for these Celtics guards with Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. They're just cooking them. They're getting past their defenders into the paint, creating foul trouble for the Raptors and also making their three-pointers. The Celtics made 13 threes in the first game and 15 threes in the second game. So the Raptors need to play better defense, close out on these Celtics shooters. And I think if they shore up their defense, then now able to give confidence to their offense and they can get points off of their defense.
True, but I think that's what is happening. They're concentrating so much on the defense with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kemba Walker. You have guys like Williams. You have guys like Daniel Tice. You have guys like Marcus Smart who are coming up big. Marcus Smart was amazing in that final quarter in that last game, and that's what took them home and now they lead 2-0 in this. So it's got to be a sustainable defense for 48 minutes for Toronto. And of course, they got to overpower them in the offense as well. And that's what is creating a challenge for the Toronto Raptors.
And quickly, Mr. Kumar, before we move on, the Raptors have the deeper team than the Celtics, because the Celtics are missing Gordon Hayward, but the Raptors aren't using their bench. Norman Powell is struggling. They need Serge Ibaka to step up. And then the Celtics role players are playing really good, like you said, Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, Marcus Smart. So that's the difference. In the playoffs, you expect the others to play well, but occasionally they're going to have bad games. So you are the stars to play well, but they're going to have bad games. So you need the others to really be able to step up, for your team. And right now, the Celtics others are gaining confidence and are empowered and are really playing well, while the Raptors other role players are struggling.
Oh, well, let's discuss more during our pick'em section about these round 2 playoffs. But before that, let's discuss about the top player performance and of course the top plays from the week. I think my choice is pretty clear. I'm going to pick Nikola Jokic, the Joker, with his phenomenal performance in that 7th game of the series, especially that skyhook shot really took them home.
Yes, it's a no-brainer for me. Also, I agree with you, Mr. Kumar, that Nikola Jokic is a top player performance. He really picked up the Nuggets team. They were really struggling in the 3rd quarter and early 4th quarter. They were going on like 5-minute, 6-minute scoring droughts. But Nikola Jokic really took the ball in his own hands, making threes, getting inside the paint, getting to the free throw line, ended up scoring 30 points. And, helping out his teammate Jamal Murray, who got a little banged up early in the game and he was having a little bit of shooting struggle. So Nikola Jokic is the player of the week.
Yeah, so let's move on to our pick'em section. Of course, we had picked the round 1 predictions to go with, and I think it's pretty simple. I think some of the games were already decided, especially the Boston, Philadelphia 76ers, Toronto, and Brooklyn Nets. I think we were just waiting for that round 1 from the Milwaukee Bucks. And of course, round 2, we were waiting on Houston and, the Denver and Utah series. I think we were both right in terms of Milwaukee Bucks, beating, the Orlando Magic 4-1. I think you had picked Miami Heat, 4-3, and I had picked 4-2 for the Miami Heat. I think we both got that wrong because I thought Indiana Pacers would have given some fight. I think I got it right when I said Boston is going to be 4-0, and you did give, I think, a couple of games. I think one game to Philadelphia. So you got that wrong, and I got that right. And I think we were both right in terms of the Toronto Raptors sweeping the Nets. So it's 3-2 for me, and 3-1 for me in the Eastern Conference, and 2-2 for you in the Eastern Conference round 1. But I think you got more right in the Western Conference because, of course, I had picked OKC to win this series. Let me tell you that, the referee needs to really look at that replay because I thought that James Harden actually jumped from outside of the line, after that block. So, of course, I am 3-1 in my picks, and you are I am 1-3, and you are 3-1. So I think you're just getting close. You're just getting close from that 7-0 drubbing that I did in the first week.
Hey, Mr. Kumar, what did I tell you? That I'm just waiting for the playoffs, the games that matter, where the stars are born. And I called that the Denver Nuggets were going to beat the Utah Jazz in 7 games. I did not see that the Utah Jazz were going to be up 3-1, but hey, it doesn't matter. The Nuggets are in 7, and also call the Rockets in 7 because I thought James Harden and Russell Westbrook will be able to outlast the Thunder. But Mr. Kumar, you got to give props to James Harden for that block. The man's been struggling all game, porous on the offensive end on the floor, but having that discipline to be able to go for that block, and he's not known as the defensive player, and getting that block. And when Dort was trying to throw it off of him, he did a little straddle and the ball went through his legs. So that was the play of the week for me. James Harden on the defensive end on the floor.
Oh, well, I'll give him some props for that, but I think I'm going to look at that replays at least 100 times to make sure that, because I know he stepped out of bounds, in that second attempt. You got to see it clearly. You got to really see it clearly. And you can see that, because that's a violation. But nevertheless, and I'm surprised that the ball actually went to Lou Dort there. He has been phenomenal in this series, of course. But I think Chris Paul should have had the ball, or it should have been Gallinari or somebody like that. So James Harden came up with a big play there.
He did, and Chris Paul was double teamed though, so that's kind of why he passed it. And they've been leaving Lou Dort open all game, so I guess they had confidence in him, but it was just too much. James Harden. And man, that was the play of the week because he really saved the Rockets there. Because I think Lou Dort would have made that shot, and the presence of mind to not allow the ball to go off of him, that's major high regards to James Harden there. And Mr. Kumar, you need to take off your Oklahoma City Thunder glasses. You need to give James Harden props and congratulations for that play. That was amazing. So now moving on, we're going to be doing our round 2 pick'em. So now we're going to be starting in the Eastern Conference with the Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Heat are up 2-0. But Mr. Kumar, I'm going to pick the Bucks in 7 games. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to go on a tear. He's going to be determined and focused and motivated to bring the Bucks back in the series. And there's one guy that can do it. It is Giannis. And like I said earlier, I don't suspect the Heat will be able to shoot the way that they've been shooting. And the Bucks are going to play better defense, lock the Heat down, and use their length to really bother the Heat. So I think the Bucks are going to make a serious comeback and win the series in 7 games. What do you think, Mr. Kumar?
Oh, I think you're too optimistic there, and I'm going to give. Till yesterday, I was hoping it would be the Bucks. I thought one game is nothing. They would come back in the second, but a 2-0. It's not impossible, of course, but I think I'm picking the Miami 4-2.
All right. Let's see if the Bucks can. Last year they were up 2-0 and they ended up losing the series. Well, now this year they're down 2-0. So let's see if they can reverse their fortunes and beat the Heat this year. So now moving on to the other series in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics and the Raptors. And the Celtics are up 2-0 on the Raptors. And Mr. Kumar, I hate to say it, but I'm going against the Toronto Raptors and picking the Celtics to win the series in 6 games. Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown have just been too much for the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors really look, out of it. They're not playing as much team-oriented basketball as I thought. They're not shooting the ball. They're kind of getting out of their identity. And I think the Celtics are just a hungry, young, hot team that is just going to be too much for the Raptors going down the stretch. I think the Raptors are going to win the next 2 games, but then I think the Celtics are going to bounce back and win the series in 6 games. And nobody saw this coming, but I think the Celtics are going to take down the defending NBA champions, Toronto Raptors.
Oh, I just going to thank the Boston Celtics for saving a lot of money for me, because I would have to throw a parade if Toronto Raptors had, of course, gone on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and if they would have won, and you would have hold on to that bet against me. So, so I'm just glad, Boston Celtics, thank you for being my savior, because I'm picking the Boston Celtics as well. They've played, amazing basketball. And you just feel the absence of a player like Leonard, coming into the fore right now. I told you they played team game throughout the season, but they just didn't have that transcendent star, in their lineup. So, so it's going to be difficult for, and they're playing small ball most of the time. Marc Gasol, of course, Serge Ibaka has been wonderful, but it's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem.
It is, and Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry really need to step up if the Raptors are going to have any chance. And Karthik Kadors is asking, is the role of the traditional big man non-existent in today's run-and-gun style basketball? Well, Mr. Kumar, I don't know if you the Game 7 against the Jazz and the Nuggets, it was the fourth quarter was dominated by Rudy Gobert and Nikola Jokic, 2 5 men, and it felt like a little bit, old school basketball, with Gobert dominating in the paint and blocking shots, and Jokic going in the paint and doing a lot of hook shots. So that kind of really turned back the clock. But the big man is being non-existent now in today's NBA. They're forced to now be on the perimeter and shoot threes rather than being in the post and using their size and dominating.
Yeah, but the traditional big man like Shaquille O'Neal or something is pretty much non-existent right now. I mean, like dominating in the paint. Most big men now like shoot threes. So, so you spread the floor more. You get more opportunities in terms of, all the big men are shooting, good percentage of from the three. So yeah, I mean, it's not those traditional where you give it to the big man inside the paint. He dominates. So yeah, there's been a big change, and especially with a lot of teams playing really small ball. I mean, Houston Rockets doesn't have a center. Their center is PJ Tucker at 6 feet 6 inches. So yeah, so there's a big change in the basketball which is happening right now. So yeah, so you pick. That's the end of the story for Toronto Raptors, my friend. You finally had to get off that bandwagon.
Yes, I think the Toronto Raptors are not going to take it, home this year, and I think they're going to fall a little short. But you have to give credit to when a young and hungry Boston Celtics team that has a lot of great guards and that's just playing better than them. I have to be frank with you. I have to tell you, Mr. Kumar, what I see when I'm watching the game, and if I'm going to be honest, Boston Celtics really look like the better team right now with the better players. So now moving on to the West pick'em section for round 2, and I'll let Mr. Kumar tell you his picks first.
Well, I mean, I think anybody who watches the show knows that I'm a Laker fan, I'm a LeBron fan, so I don't think I can go against my Lakers or my LeBron James. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for a team like Houston to stop somebody like Anthony Davis. They just don't have anybody to stop him. I think if he consistently performs like the way he did in the last 2 games against Portland, I think Houston Rockets have no chance. I would still give, a little bit of a brain freeze for the Lakers in a couple of games where they shoot really bad, but their defense has been extremely good. I'm, of course, picking the Lakers in 6.
All right, I definitely agree with you. And the Rockets have a great chance to get game 1 because the Lakers have been off since like Sunday and the Rockets just having played, so they're still in that rhythm. But I also agree, Mr. Kumar, Lakers are going to win in 6 games. I think the Lakers bigs are just going to be too much for the Rockets. Anthony Davis, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard. They're not only going to dominate in the paint, but they're also going to dominate on the offensive boards, giving the Lakers second chance points. And I was really encouraged by the Lakers role players of, KCP, Alex Caruso, Danny Green, really started to play well and shooting the ball better at the end of that Portland series. And I feel like they can carry that on. And because we already know what LeBron James and Anthony Davis are going to give you. And the Lakers have always been good on the defensive end on the floor. And I think Harden, he's not playing to the same level that he's been playing before. And I think the Lakers will be able to lock down Harden and Westbrook and really continue to make the Rockets one-dimensional, because the Rockets may hit threes a couple games, but they're not going to be able to hit all the threes needed to win 4 games in this series. I think the Lakers' talent and depth is going to be too much for the Rockets, and I have the Lakers going winning the series in 6 games.
I think the last series is pretty much. I mean, there's no real challenge for the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers run very deep, and they have huge bench strength. So I think that's something which is non-existent for Denver. So I think that's one of the key reasons. I think Clippers are going to win in 5. I'm not give Denver a chance to win more than 1 game in the series.
I do agree, Mr. Kumar. The Clippers are going to win in 5 games, but for one reason only. His name is Kawhi Leonard. The Claw, the new king of LA, he got now. I think Kawhi Leonard has just been playing unbelievable this playoffs. He's been really the one that's carrying the Clippers. And if the role players continue to step up, and Paul George even gives the Clippers a resemblance of what he can, give them, I think the Clippers are going to win this series easily. I think their defense is going to be too much, for Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And the Nuggets are, right now more of an offensive team, and what the Clippers could really be able to outscore them. And the Nuggets are going to have no answer for Kawhi Leonard, and Clippers are going to get a lot of, wide open shots and get whatever they want on the offensive end. So I think Clippers just have a great all around game, too much depth, and Kawhi Leonard. And I feel like the Clippers are going to win this series in 5 games.
Just don't coronate the claw as the king yet. He's got a long way to go. He's got to win 12 more games in order to be the king of LA. I think the king. There's only one king so far, and that's LeBron James. So, I mean, he's got a long way to go. 12 more games. It's got to be 12 more games for Lakers. It's got to be 12 more games for the Clippers. So let's see who gets anointed as the king.
And we'll see next series, Mr. Kumar, because the Clippers and the Lakers are going to play each other in the conference finals. And I think Kawhi Leonard's going to win that, and he's going to take the mantle from LeBron James. But, we have to finish round 2 before we can get to the Lakers and Clippers. But we can't wait.
Yeah. So that's the end of the round 2 of the Western Conference. Of course, starts tomorrow or tonight in the U.S. with the Clippers playing the Denver. And then, of course, on Friday, we have the Lakers playing Houston. So, let's see. I think let's move on to our NBA segment, where we're going to discuss about whether the NBA and the players have been the most influential, and whether, they're the most responsible players in terms of standing up for social justice issues. So I think what's credible is that the league, that is the NBA, and the players have done a phenomenal job of supporting social causes. NBA Cares has been around for a very long time. They're doing a lot of community service with the players, with the teams. But this was different. This was in the aftermath of, African Americans, being wronged, being killed. And, the players stood up for it. And the players have made a real difference. 4 years ago, Colin Kaepernick started with the movement of kneeling down during the national anthem. And, people called him a traitor. People called him, he was insulting the U.S. flag. And he was ostracized from the, NFL. But, you can see that happening with every NBA player, whether they are, black, whether they are, white, or whether they are from any other community. So I think it's been phenomenal. I think you got to give them props for standing up, for the community.
I definitely agree, and they're standing up, for what's right. And the players are very, unified. They all have one, message. They're trying to create a action plan to be able to create equality, bring social justice, for African Americans. And before even the bubble, you saw that the players were in the streets, like a Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Giannis Antetokounmpo, out there protesting and letting their voices be heard, that we will not be silent. We're more than basketball players. This is bigger than basketball. And we're going to stand up, for what we believe in, no matter. And really, the owners and Adam Silver have really embraced the players, standing up for these social justice issues. And I think that's made the NBA a great, league to watch, because they're not only about basketball, but they're about what's right and bringing, justice and creating equality. So I think the message that the NBA is sending has been really powerful and really created shockwaves, not only here in the U.S., but around the world.
Yeah, absolutely, because I will be extremely shocked if that happens in India, especially with Indian sports persons. Maybe it's the cricketers, maybe it's the, football players, whether it's any other sport. Because, I don't think there's ever been a precedence of Indian sports person standing up for some social causes, and because it's a highly politically motivated society here, and I think it would be detrimental for them. So I wish the players here were more stronger. The players here had, had the guts or had the courage to stand up for some of these causes. But at the end of the day, I think it's not just Black Lives Matter, but it's all lives matter,
Yep.
And so that's the message I would like to give, to our players.
Yes, and LeBron James has really been at the forefront of using his powerful voice. He's been speaking on political issues. In 2016 he endorsed Hillary Clinton to be a presidential nominee. He's really encouraged other players to be able to not only speak about social justice issues but politics. LeBron James has really done a lot in the community, creating the I Promise schools for elementary school, kids from underprivileged backgrounds. And LeBron James is not afraid to speak up and give his opinion. He really went back at it with that Fox Sports reporter that was trying to tell him to shut up and dribble. LeBron's like, no, I'm more than an athlete. And us players can really use our platform to really enact change in our society. And just major, props to LeBron James. And he's really been doing a great job of not only empowering himself, but empowering other athletes to be able to speak out on these issues.
During that meeting as well with the players, Udonis Haslem basically said to LeBron James, if you're not playing, I don't think, anybody else should be playing because you're the most, powerful player. And if a superstar like LeBron James says that we should boycott the games, that means no other player should be here. But I think LeBron James was most frustrated because he thought that, we should boycott, yes, but we should also have a plan in terms of what can be done next. There's no, reason to boycott without having, some concrete steps that the owners can take. So finally, that happened on that Thursday morning meeting. And, as I said, sense prevailed and they were able to get into an agreement that the owners would probably do much more and then come back. But, that's the way it is. But, but I still think no other league, whether it's the European soccer leagues, the players there, or the European basketball leagues, or even in the US, whether it's NFL or whether it's baseball, I think NBA and the NBA Players Association have really set a precedent in terms of what the players can do, what the league can do, and what the team owners can do. Right,
and they're really spreading that message of social justice and really holding the owners' feet to the fire. They continue to have social justice messages on the court, on the jersey, commercials, and they're doing a great job of really trying to spread like the message of, hey, we need equality, and African Americans, their voices need to be heard, and the players are kind of speaking for the African American community, and the NBA is really embracing these social justice issues because they want to make the society a better place. So the NBA fantastic jobs, and I cannot say enough things about the way that they're conducting themselves and the job that they're doing.
Well, it remains to be seen what happens, of course, after this season. But I think we will have to move on because of the paucity of time. And we will have to move on to the spiciest section or the spiciest show on YouTube, the Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show Indian Tadka section.
Tadka! Getting spicy with it!
Ooh. I need some water. It's already hot. But welcome once again to the Indian Tadka section of the Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show. Of course, thank you very much for your comments, and keep connecting with us on Facebook and YouTube Live, and of course subscribe to our channel on Ekalavyas YouTube channel, and of course follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Patel and Kumar. Thank you, Bhushan Suryavanshi, and wow, that's breaking news. I think we got from Bhushan Suryavanshi that Brooklyn Nets have signed Steve Nash as a new head coach. That is surprising I think we will be discussing more about it in our future show. But I think we have, of course, our topic for discussion in this Indian Tarka section was the advent of professional basketball league in India. And of course, I think people have been waiting for the last 10 years. And there's no doubt that people want it in India. But we will hear a little bit from our guest, Charu Sharma, who is a quizmaster, commentator for a lot of sports. He's been in the sports industry, he's presenting about sports for the last 25 years. But more importantly, he is the promoter of the Pro Kabaddi League with his company, Mashal Sports. So let's take a look at his interview and then come back and discuss more about how we can influence our audience to start the professional basketball league in India. Welcome to the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show, and this is the Indian Tarka section, the spiciest section on YouTube. And we have none other than Charu Sharma, a commentator, presenter, quizmaster, and now a sports promoter, especially starting the Pro Kabaddi League in India, and to revolutionize the sport of Kabaddi, and of course, any other sport other than cricket. And so thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to have you, and it's an honor and a privilege, sir.
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you for your generous words.
Thank you. So Shivam, please go ahead with your question.
You're one of the great pioneers because you're one of the founders of the Pro Kabaddi League in India. And throughout your career, like Vinod said, you were a cricket commentator, quiz master, and host of award shows, and now a sports promoter with the Kabaddi League. So I wanted to know, how is that transition going from commentator to sports promoter?
Well, it's actually a confusing transition because at heart I'm still very much, I suppose, primarily just a sportsman, and then a commentator, and only lately a promoter. So if people try and slot me into a sports promoter angle, I object. I say, well, hang on, I'm still a commentator, and I still do the assignment here and the other, although I must confess, because once I got deeply embedded into the Kabaddi world to start off the Pro Kabaddi League, the assignments did dry up, and I had to say no to a lot of assignments. And in many worlds, as you know, the more you say no, the less the assignments come. So it was a tough transition because once the league was set, and of course now it's in all sorts of other very good hands, I said, well, hang on, where are all the commentary assignments? And they are, hopefully they'll restart. But I suppose I'm a mishmash of my own motto, which is any sport, anywhere, anytime.
They're trying to establish a basketball league, in India. So you started, the Pro Kabaddi League. You would know kind of the process behind that, starting a league in India. So kind of explain us through that process a little bit of starting a league and maybe any challenges that it may occur kind of at the beginning.
Well, as you both must know, and maybe all your viewers, that there was a basketball league that came up a few years ago, right? Maybe about 5 years ago. Was it the UBL or was it called?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Right. So you guys know that the attempt has been made in India, and for whatever it's worth, I'm sure they put in a lot of hard work in there. Now, unfortunately, it no longer exists because it didn't maybe meet their expectations, or the commercials were questionable, or whatever it may have been. But that attempt has been made, and it's been made in a manner that didn't quite take the federation and everybody else along, and maybe therein was the problem in our part of the world. So, if one is unable to have the federation tag along, the national federation, then in a country such as India, it's going to be very difficult to progress because they could become major spokes in the wheel. And you certainly don't want that, Shivam, because you want to take the whole fraternity, the whole universe of basketball with you. And if the custodians of the sport, as officially approved by the government and everybody else, are working on the wrong side, then sooner or later, you're going to be tired of swimming against the tide or playing basketball against the tide. So, it's very important to take the federation along, give them the confidence that you're there for the benefit of the sport, because they are also technically there for the benefit of the sport, correct? As the custodians.
Yes.
And whatever happens, if you're unable to take the custodians of the sport along, then in our part of the world, try not doing a league or anything else, because it's just, it's going to be labeled a rebel league, and people who play there are not going to be able to play other forms of basketball or for the country or whatever else. And that just, to me, it's a downward spiral. And I know the NBA, I know that there's some kind of a situation with the Basketball Federation and others who may think they have the rights and so on and so forth. But, maybe, Vinod, you can explain that to me, or to Shivam as well, because that is a huge stumbling block. But I don't believe that stumbling blocks can be that strong a wall. You've got to figure ways out to crack that wall and say, listen, we're all hoping to work in the same direction. So let's do it, whatever it takes. And I'm sure matters can be escalated beyond just the Basketball Federation of India, to the government, to whoever, keep bashing that wall till you break through, because once that wall is broken through, only then can plans fructify. You can make all the plans we want, but if the major custodian is not with you, and not only not with you, but against you, it's going to be a really, downward spiral, very uphill situation, downward spiral, uphill battle, whatever you want to say. Yeah. So that's just my first observation. And I know that you, Vinod, and Shivam, if you've been involved, or others who were joined in Gopal earlier, would know much more about this standoff, this impasse between the custodians and those who are making plans to take basketball forward. Mm-hmm. But unless that's cracked, it's all just on paper.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. Very well said. And I hope this message reaches to, of course, all the basketball fans and everybody, so that everybody comes together. I mean, because ultimately, as you said, it's like, all passionate people have to come and be on the same page if you really want it to be successful. So that's absolutely true. Sorry,
Vinod, I think the basketball fraternity
yes,
needs to now put pressure on the federation, saying, hey, listen, you're not allowing us to grow by having this impasse. I mean, let's get rid of it, because, we as basketball players, and as the current basketball players, as those who need to inspire generations below us or younger than us, need a professional outlet. Yeah. So that professional outlet is being denied to us because of some situation. I'm not going to use, critical words here. Then let's get that whole situation remedied, because we're not able to ply our trade.
All right, so now this kind of moving on. So I wanted to ask you kind of the future of the Pro Kabaddi League, because you've already had a lot of success. So where do you see the Pro Kabaddi League going forward in the future? And maybe with yourself, do you see yourself with more, commentating gigs, or keeping as a sports presenter, sports promoter for the Kabaddi League?
Yeah, well, Shivam, I'm all for patience. I know it's not a currency that a lot of younger people enjoy these days or are loaded with, but I would like a lot more patience to seep into everybody in the world. And on the Pro Kabaddi League, I really would like more patience in allowing it to have stronger legs. Yeah, it's done very well, touch wood, but I'm not so worried about the PKL doing better and better, bigger, better, more, better, richer. I'm just very concerned about it being very stable. Mm-hmm. Because there are many factors that lend a little bit of instability. And yes, we've been very fortunate with, most problems being solved, but there are still a few issues that need a little more stability is the only word that comes to mind, more consistency, more sustainability. And I would first go for all of that, because no Rome was built in a day, no league is built in a day. And I'd like that sustainability to be a rock solid part of the PKL before we start doing more. But as you may or may not know, I started a company with Anand called Mashal Sports, also with my lawyer friend in Rajiv Luthra. And that is now largely owned by the Star Group, because it's just a very long story, this one, and I will not be able to elaborate here. But, and we are minority shareholders. So it's largely run by Mashal Sports still, but Star has a very strong influence there, because, they did do an enormous amount in promoting and taking the game forward. So, it's in good hands that way. We're 12 teams now, which is a very big league. But I do think that we have scope for another 4 more, because, India is a very large country. And if we have 4 from each zones, north, south, east, west, that's 16. So I'd like it to reach 16 teams before we can feel some level of saturation in India. And only after that do we start whether we can go to other countries and, kind of move it all about. Because the commercials that surround the Pro Kabaddi League are still not huge. I mean, it's a league that's done extraordinarily well, if I can say so myself. But because we started from a very small commercial box, we've grown into a reasonable commercial box, but it's still not big enough for any kind of extravagance, should we say. And I'd rather be more careful commercially than be, adventurous, because you don't want to bite more than you can chew, is one of my many mottos. You may say, but you need to grab more, but I'm saying, no, hey, you bite, you enjoy yourself, make sure you can swallow it, then you move on to more. Where we probably, not as a league, but as the universe of Kabaddi, which is centered around India for historical reasons, where we need to do a lot more work is evangelize the game in other countries. Now, it may not be as difficult as it sounds, because it's an extremely elementary offer. You need nothing but a little bit of space on a mat or so and get going. So the simplicity of the game is its biggest asset in terms of growth. We can go to any country, for instance, I don't know, Poland, and there are big, tough guys there. Of course, Kabaddi, the competitive Kabaddi has a weight limit of 85. It was actually 80, and we can get on the whole rules thing later, but I changed it to 85 when we started because, if you want, I can give you the side story here about one of the many rule changes. It's because many of the game stars who had just given up the game in 2015-16 have played the league because there's an 80-kilo weight limit in Kabaddi, international competitive Kabaddi. And I said, those guys are big heroes and icons, and if you're going to miss out because of the 80 thing, they're just, they let themselves go a bit, a kilo here, kilo there. So if we take our league up to 85, we can include a very large number of recently retired iconic players. And for them, it can be a last sort of roll of the dice in terms of finally earning something about courtesy of the game, rather than just being blown away for a few months here, then the other. So we increased it to 85, which is stuck. And it was largely because I wanted to ensure that those who recently retired could just get one little roll of the dice and make a little bit of money before they move off into the sunset. But back to Poland, we can go in there, take a mat along, any old mat or carpet, and teach people the game. Now, most sort of sports-friendly or countries which have a sports culture will be very happy to get into full contact sport and explain the rules, which are very, very simple, and get going, because you don't need much space at all in any old sort of sporting club. You can get it going. So I see a big future for promoting this game. Unlike, say, if I might, I don't mean any disrespect, but unlike, say, cricket, we need so much more. And it's so weather prone, and it's, because it's outdoor, and try spreading cricket. I mean, they've been trying for 50 years, and it's very, very difficult. Yeah. But Kabaddi, a bit like basketball, I suppose, is, and of course, much easier than even basketball, is very easy to push for this growth. So personally, I mean, do I have any bucket list things? No, I'm a very happy, satisfied man generally, maybe easily satisfied. But I would like to be able to evangelize the sport in many other countries by just going there and giving it a bit of a push on behalf of the various international federations or the national federations or the Pro Kabaddi League or, whichever platform, it doesn't matter. But I'd like that to develop.
Sure. And thank you. And how's the lockdown been? And what have you been up to this last 5 months?
Well, I've been, for one reason or the other, I've been a traveling man. And I've traveled on work and otherwise extensively for the last 40 years. And maybe that's come back to bite me, because for the last 5 months, I haven't stepped out of Bangalore. So, because it was so inconvenient, it's just not possible unless there was an emergency, God forbid. So, I'm back to doing what I love, but I do it almost all the time now because there's no real work or nothing. I mean, there's no sporting events, so there's no commentary. There are webinars and what have you, but they're, they're not for commercial purposes. So, in the last 4 or 5 months, I have played more golf than in the last 10, 15 years. And of course, tennis virtually every evening. So, lots of exercise, good fun, happy eating. Yeah. And thanks God for these small mercies, because, I mean, if food on table was a bit of a problem, then, there would be a very high degree of suffering. But fortunately, God, food on table is not a problem. So, hey, listen, focus on health and play. even in Kabaddi, a lot of people told me, as you can imagine, the world was full of advice about one, how it's not going to work, and two, if it needs to work, then you really need a big grassroots layout program. And you need to make it popularized in schools and what have you. And my simple answer there to a lot of these people who said, listen, why don't you go around popularizing the game of Kabaddi in schools, and then we'll kind of see much later what happens. And I say there are, 6 million schools in India, and I start going and evangelizing Kabaddi in these schools, I'll be like 10,948 years old before I can, finish going around to the schools. It's not going to happen. So very often, the success of a sport can also take place or be assisted with, thank you. Yeah, let it trickle down. So if you have something very attractive at the top for basketball, you'll find that all the courts that are lying unused and, will suddenly be full of kids saying, well, I want to, play and become a big basketball player because that's what I want to be. And why? Because that's within reach. That's in India. I can see it. I've been to the matches. I can feel it. I can touch it. I can smell it. The problem is that you follow the NBA, it's like, one, you can't even follow it because it's like from 2 a.m. to whatever, 4 a.m.
Absolutely.
So it's a big timing challenge. And two, it's like something that's happening on another planet. But if it's happening in India, and these basketball, the NBA guys are not going to come to India. But I mean, they do, one guy comes for one day show. And I mean, they're all kind of, if I may say so, Shivam, I'm very sorry about this, but they're all very derisive about going to all these faraway places and kind of, wasting their time.
No, that's true.
Because I mean, they're only in it for themselves. And, they speak about evangelizing, but they're not. I mean, if I'm getting a couple of $1 million to play the game in, or maybe much more in the US, I wouldn't really want to go to, I don't know, Vietnam and start, sort of saying, hey guys, how are you? And I'm, on the NBA and don't bother me. By the way, don't touch me. I'm going because time is up. I mean, that's not going to take me forward. So this, leagues need to happen in their own countries, and then hopefully they can attract other retired players or whatever other, players from other parts of the world who are much better to be able to give the locals the necessary kind of inspiration.
Like role models to look up to, like they can look up to,
But you've got to have a local product. And I can understand, well, I mean, I can, I suppose, but the NBA, if they're interested in truly partnering the development of basketball in India, IMG Reliance and the Basketball Federation of India and the International Basketball Federation, by the way, who would also be keen to make basketballs growing, need to meet once, twice, 10,000 times and push and push and push for the collaboration. Because without the collaboration of any one of these parties, it's not going to work out.
Absolutely.
And you make some very good points. I think that's very true.
Even the International Basketball Federation, which gives its affiliation to the Basketball Federation of India, needs to carry a little knife there saying, hey, you don't want to agree to these things? You're not affiliated anymore. We need another, people need to put that kind of pressure because after all of us, I'm saying us, but all the four parties that I mentioned, and the players particularly, are in for the development of the game.
Yeah.
And if the game develops, everybody benefits.
Everybody benefits.
Players won't benefit, or the federation won't benefit, or the NBA won't benefit, or the International Federation won't benefit, or IMG Reliance won't benefit. Everybody will benefit if they all come together and take the game forward. So I can't understand these ego battles because they're only worsening the game. I mean, basketball in India used to have a fabulous kind of following, reputation, attraction, even till the late 70s, 80s in India.
Because
other sports grew.
And that time India was performing well as well, because in the Asian level and, all those kind of things. Of course, the other countries jumped up exponentially in terms of development later on.
Yeah, because they had no, barriers sort of preventing collaboration. So this collaboration, Shivam, is very important. And through your medium and through every other possible medium, people need to push for this collaboration. Surely these matters are easily solved if people just sit at the table long enough and say, I'm not getting up from this table till we find a solution, because we need to make basketball happen.
And everyone's kind of looking out in their best own self-interest rather than like the collective unit coming together.
I don't even think they're looking at their self-interest. They're just looking at disrupting. Disrupting.
It's for sadistic pleasure rather than anything.
Yeah, well, because, if I'm looking for my benefit, I would certainly try and make it happen so I can benefit. Yes. How do I benefit by not making it happen? It doesn't help anyone.
But yeah, as I said, I mean, yeah,
Wow.
see, as a basketball fan, as a basketball person who has conducted so many tournaments and everything, I personally feel, yes, I mean, I would really like a professional league to happen. And I think, it's possible. It's possible, of course. I mean, it's just the right permutation and combination of things to happen.
And also, finally, I think I mentioned this earlier, and I say finally because, I have about 5,000 other things to say, but, maybe because you guys are running out of time. One of the many reasons that leagues or projects such as these, and the many other leagues in India that did start thanks to the IPL and maybe the Pro Kabaddi League and what have you, all of whom are sadly stuttering,
Languishing.
because this scenario, are doing so because the commercial box that you want to begin with is not well understood and studied and offered. I don't want a commercial box that matches cricket or any other sport. I mean, each sport has its own commercial box.
Mm-hmm.
Just like each sport is unique. I mean, you don't want to play basketball with a rugby ball. You have, so
Yeah.
every sport has its own universe and its own commercial appeal. And if you say, oh, so-and-so's offering $100,000, we must start at $150,000. Forget this comparison.
Mhm.
Where is basketball in India now? If you understand that, then you will understand what kind of revenue, what kind of commercial partnerships are possible. And if the commercial partnerships are 1/10 of what you would like to begin with that 1/10. Don't
Sure.
put it at 10x
Absolutely.
because 10x is not sustainable. And you might convince 5, 10, 15 people to put, 10x for a year or two. Those guys are going to back off saying, sorry, I think it's a little too much money at this point of time. Because in India, remember, I mean, you might have a few very wealthy individuals, but we are essentially still a very poor country.
Yeah.
And, we need to understand the mechanics and the local, how the land lies locally. I also think that the NBA or IMG Reliance and or the International Basketball Federation needs to bring in on the table brands that know basketball and follow basketball, even if it's a Coca-Cola or whatever else. You've got NBA partners and others.
Yeah,
And say
yeah.
that, join us on the table and say that if you guys start a league, hey, we are willing to put in this much, whatever, so let's all sit together. That suddenly rings the bell. And even all the naysayers and all the disruptors will say, oh, hang on, we've got somebody willing to support this? Well, let's sit down and talk about this. Because then suddenly you feel, oh, there's a commercial partner. It changes the ballgame completely.
Right.
And now to put a homegrown Indian company to support the cause of basketball, which is seen to be an American sport, I think is, again, not knowing how the land lies. You need an quintessential American brand to spend 1/75th of that
Of what they
dollar
spend there.
Yeah, to come to India and say, we will take this game forward because we love this game. We want that association. They will get enormous benefit being, the promoters of this first ever major, league in India. So that effort also needs to be done because, paper planning is one thing. But when you start going to get commercial partners, a lot of them say, well, I don't know about this sport at this point of time, because it hasn't been done before. When it succeeds, you come to me. I'm saying, who else is going to help us make it succeed? So if there are a couple of brands who are convinced that they want to join this party and take the game forward and be the pioneers, and you get a lot of positive kind of, rub off being the pioneers, even commercial pioneers, partners, then I think, there's a serious kind of offer on the table. Right now, we'll all go to International Federation and IMG Reliance and NBA and the local federation, all sit down on the table saying, oh, let's make plans, let's work together. Maybe it's okay. Once a Coca-Cola comes down, sits on that same table, it changes the ball game.
It changes the dynamic of the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the interview, and I would like to thank Charu Sharma, for coming on and hear his thoughts about the Pro Kabaddi League, about basketball in India, and then the challenges of starting a basketball pro league in India. And it was great to hear his kind of perspective and his thoughts about various topics.
Absolutely. I mean, it was wonderful insights, I mean, especially from a man, who has pretty much started, the Pro Kabaddi League. And he also mentioned to us about the struggles that he had in terms of starting that league. And it took him almost 6 to 7 years from conceptualization to getting it on the ground. And now you can see, that sport really being revolutionized in India. I mean, a traditional Indian sport which was played pretty much in the rural parts of India, and now it's like a mainstream sport, mainstream entertainment. I mean, it's just not the sport. I mean, it can't just be people playing the sport, enjoying it, but it has to be the audience also who needs to enjoy each and every moment. So, of course, they made some changes in the rules, made it more exciting, and it really caught on. And I wouldn't be surprised if Kabaddi grows to become an more international sport. Of course, it's being played by a lot of Asian countries because it's part of the Asian Games. But I think the ceiling is unlimited.
It is, and it was huge, for Charu and partners to be able to create, this Kabaddi League and a league outside of cricket to be doing, so well and having the viewership and popularity that it has. And the people of India are really been attracted to Kabaddi, and this league has achieved a lot of success. And then, like you said, maybe they would maybe want to try to globalize it and maybe spread the league to other countries. So the league definitely has a bright future, and they're definitely doing a great job with everything.
Yeah, so let's hope, better sense prevails and there is a pro basketball league in India very soon. Of course, a lot of the people watching our show today also, are hoping that we get a professional league, in India very soon. That pretty much brings an end to our Indian Tadka section. But let me tell you, it was really spicy. It was really tangy. And I think we put a lot of Tadka in this section today, especially with that interview by Charu Sharma. So once again, thank you very much to him for being a part of this show.
Yes, thank you very much to him. And I could definitely, feel all the spices. It was definitely spicy and very, relevant to bring him on, starting, a pro league, the Kabaddi Pro League. And I think that's very relevant because the Indian fans and the Indian people have been waiting for a pro basketball league. And I have a feeling that it's going to be coming, very soon in the future. So now moving on, we're going to end on with the memes and start with the U.S. meme. And so for me, it's Marcus Smart wearing a Larry Bird wearing a Marcus Smart mask because Marcus Smart has been shooting the ball as well as Larry Bird is shooting. It ended up making 5 threes at the end of game 2 to really allow the Celtics to be able to beat the Raptors.
Yeah, I was the one to give Larry Bird that Marcus Smart mask, by the way, Shivam, because, of course, I didn't have to give that. I didn't want to give that parade, if the Toronto Raptors win, right? So that's the whole idea behind it.
Yeah, it's very funny. So if Marcus Smart keeps shooting that way, then the Celtics are definitely gonna, go far, maybe even win the championship. Who knows? So Larry Bird's magic is rubbing off on Marcus Smart. Well, thank you again to everybody that's watching. We really enjoyed your comments. Keep them coming. For the next show, and thank you again, Mr. Kumar and our entire production team for another great episode. And if you want the best basketball coverage, remember, no other place you want to be besides the Patel and Kumar show every Thursday at 7 p.m. India time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Please subscribe to our channel, the Ekalavyas YouTube channel. Set reminder for every Thursday at 7 p.m. And of course, connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. And, your comments might be featured on the show. At Patel and Kumar is our ID. And once again, I can't wait for the next week. We'll, of course, have more news about round 2 of the NBA playoffs, the Western Conference playoffs starting tomorrow for Indian audience, and of course tonight for the US audience. So Thank you very much. Sign off. Sayonara, Mr. Patel.
See ya. We had breaking news, Mr. Kumar. Wakanda!
What